Welcome to Small Town Snarks. I'm Joel.
And I'm Miranda. Let's get snarky.
There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. The corn's as high as an elephant's eye, and it is climbing up to the sky. We're back.
You lost me. I don't know the rest of it. I only know the one snippet.
And
We've got bread.
we do have bread.
We have to talk about it. We can't just leave it on the table.
Well, I'm laying all the bread out on the table. We're doing a show right now.
Yeah. It's called Bread, the musical. Heard of it?
I really love that Act 2 opener, Wheat or Rye.
A very difficult choice.
It is, but it's a tab number too, which is.
What's your bread choice?
What's my bread choice?
Yeah, your go-to.
Oh, I'm a wheat bread kind of person. Sometimes I'll go for like a rye or something fancy, but
I'm a wheat usually because it gives me the illusion that I'm being healthier. But also, I just love a biscuit. Mm-hmm. Biscuits, when they're homemade, they slap.
Yeah, I'll eat any and all breads. A restaurant with a bread service, even better. Yeah. Big fan of bread.
Well,
yes. Thank you.
That.
But yeah, so that bread is here because we're doing Into the Woods, and everyone in the cast is very uncomfortable with the way this prop bread feels because it is squishy and like a sponge and unsettling.
I think we ordered it from Amazon, not a sponsor, but Amazon, if you want to sponsor us, reach out. But we ordered like a variety pack of prop bread, and most of them are like baguettes and like great stuff for Into the Woods for like a baking shop to have. And then there's just a random slice of like sandwich bread.
One slice.
Just one. Not two. Nope. You can't pretend to make a sandwich. It's just one slice. And it's... How would you describe the texture of it?
Unsettling and scary. Oh, you mean like the really describe it? Yeah.
It's squishy.
It's almost like a sponge. Kind of. I don't know.
It's like one of those things, like one of those toys where you probably had some of these growing up, but like it just collects dirt wherever it is. Yeah. So like you place it somewhere, if like you have an animal, it gets all the animal hair and all the dirt and the dust. And this is one of those things. It like has that texture where it just like picks up everything. So it definitely has the plague on it now, but it's living here.
Yeah.
And it is kind of fun to touch. I don't really find it disturbing. It's just more unexpected. Like you don't...
It looks like bread. I mean, I will say.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable, I'm not going to lie.
I just don't know why you would need one slice of fake
I don't know.
sandwich bread.
We're going to find out.
Yeah.
This is going to air after Into the Woods, but if you saw Into the Woods and you saw the one slice of bread, it makes its appearance, so...
I don't think it's going to make an appearance.
I will make sure that slice of bread is on stage.
I think we should hide it in future shows that have nothing to do with baking.
I think every show should just have one slice of bread in it.
Yeah.
It's just
I think we should put little eyes on it and just...
Bready. We'll name it.
Bread.
This is going off the rails.
Mr. Doe.
Like Mr. Doe. That's a good one.
He has risen.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, well, it's going to be a really weird transition into today's topic, which is professionalism. So we are taking a little bit of a break from our regularly scheduled programming to discuss a topic that is near and dear to our hearts.
Oh, it sure is.
Professionalism.
We've got a lot of big feelings about it.
We do have a lot of big feelings about it. I guess we could kind of just go into this conversation with just a blank statement of what is professionalism from our perspective. specifically within the realm of the work that we do on a regular basis with, our theater work and community theater.
I mean, at the very, very basic level, normally to be a professional, you have to be paid for your work. That's the technical definition, right? But for our purposes, we use the term professionalism as the standards we strive for in every production. And to us, I kind of view it as, what are the people at the top doing? What are they doing well? And how can we take some of those things that they do, on a massive budget, massive scale, and incorporate those into our smaller scale community theater productions and create an environment where people are safe and comfortable making theater. And I think that's kind of the bare bones of it. So, like, we can't go and call ourselves a professional theater because we don't pay our actors. So in order to be a professional theater company, you would have to pay employees, right? But we take a lot of aspects from companies that employ people and incorporate them into what we do. And we also look at professional companies who maybe don't do the best things and go a different direction. But that's kind of like how I view professionalism and how we've been able to take some of those ideas.
Yeah, I think, you look at it from that lens, and then you look at it from the lens of professionalism of what we're providing and what we're offering, and creating a professional atmosphere in the work that we do, and setting expectations of professionalism. So I know, like, from my personal opinion and experience, you and I have been doing that. We've been doing this for many, many moons now.
Almost a decade.
That's a big statement. Almost a decade. And I think one thing that I really pride us on is our recognition and expectation of high standards.
Yeah.
We really strive to set a tone that people are creating, and they are here with us to put on the best production that they possibly can. And we expect people to be committed to that mission and that goal when they commit to doing a show. And I think that's something that over the years we've not only strived for, but we've put into practice with our, we set the expectations at the very beginning of, here's a contract, this is what we expect from you during this process.
Yeah. You have to fill out forms before you audition.
Yes. So that's a really big piece of it. But then upholding those expectations throughout the process and making sure that things are done on time and also done correctly per that agreement and per those expectations. But, I think we can almost break that down even further, and it would probably be really beneficial for us to kind of have this discussion of, like, what does that look like in a theater setting?
Well, and I think part of what's interesting about this conversation is this wasn't, we had talked about this. This wasn't something that was modeled for us in our high school experience, what this was supposed to look like. It was something we kind of had to figure out along the way, what that looks like. And I do think I pulled quite a bit from my cheerleading background. But it's applicable to almost any team sport if you did something in high school like that, where you have a schedule. You're expected to be there on those days. You have certain things outside of the schedule, like promotional or fundraising activities that if you're a part of the team, you're expected to attend.
Exactly.
And I think when we use the word community, some people don't quite get it, and I think Dakota's made a great point, Dakota, my husband, of kind of explaining what community looks like in community theater. But a great example is we have a paint day later today, from 1 to 3. We're not singing any of the songs. We're not working on choreo. And it's to help paint the set for Into the Woods.
Mm-hmm.
And, and honestly, I think this is partially our fault, and I can guarantee you after this show, we're going to have a discussion about how do we do a paint day better in the future. But we got some questions from people, do we have to be there? Is this required? Like, can I just take the day off? What does this look like? And I think that aspect of community is sometimes lost, because community to me means, yeah, we all get our butts together and we finish the painting. And even if you're playing the baker and Into the Woods, or the witch and Into the Woods, you're going to pick up a paintbrush and paint next to the person who's puppeting bird number 5, and you guys are going to work together to get the set done. And that's part of what I love about community theater is everyone working towards a common goal.
Yes.
And it's not just I show up, I do my one thing. And this is where we're different from Broadway, right? They won't ask Audra McDonald to show up and paint the set for Gypsy.
Right.
Right? They have a little bit of a different standard there, but they also have a whole crew that they can pay to paint the set.
Right.
And we don't have that.
Unions and teams that specifically do that. And it,
right.
I think, just to jump in on a comment here, I love that mindset with community theater and the fact that it gives everybody agency over the production. I direct a lot of theater. You direct a lot of theater. People are performers and people are technicians and people are, whatever their primary piece is to this process. That's not always where the line ends. And it shouldn't be. I mean, the really nice thing, and I used to talk this way a lot about, like, theater in general, especially at an education level. Sometimes people jump into theater and they think, you know what? I want to act. I want to perform. I want to be on stage. I want to be, in front of an audience. I want to be able to create a character. I want to do all of that good stuff. And especially at the education level, we see this a lot with, the work that we do, but people do that and then they discover, okay, that wasn't what I was expecting to get out of this process, or, maybe it wasn't something that I enjoyed very much. Maybe I'm going to try and, I will paint a set, or I will, shadow and learn how to do lights, or I might do X, Y, and Z. And you discover that there's, more involved with theater than just being on stage or just being a technician.
Yeah.
And there's something really fulfilling about that. And it's also, kind of a big conversation that's going on right now in the theater community of everyone feeling represented and having a space within the art form and having that opportunity. And that's one of the great things that this process and the community theater level provides is you not only have agency over the show itself because you're putting in work to support not just your piece, but the production as a whole, but you also get to learn that there are so many opportunities out there and you're not stuck in the path of okay, I'm just here to do a show. I'm just here to act. That's the only thing I'm doing. And that's it.
I've also, and I know you've experienced this as well, I've seen it firsthand where, someone is acting in a production and they end up helping with a set piece or helping with a prop, and the pride they get when they get to see that piece on stage and they're like, guys, I helped paint that, or I painted those leaves, or I helped assemble that, I'm not a crafty person and I helped Savannah make the Milky White puppet, and I learned a bunch about how to make a puppet, and I wasn't something I'd done before. And even our witch recently, we had a prop list and we sent it out to the cast, and we were just if you find any of these things, let us know. And her she had a connection, or it was her place of work or something, but they had a bunch of props that we could borrow. And that's part of what I love, is all these people being we're all in it together.
Yes.
You're not on your own island trying to do props. You're not on your island trying to do set. We're going to come and we're going to rally around you and we're going to get it done together.
I think the other really important thing, and this kind of plays into the professional conversation, but also just life in general, community theater is one of those things that's great for many reasons. But the one that I always come back to is that for most people this isn't their everyday 9 to 5 job, or most people are not working on shows all day, every day. Like, people are coming into this process with different backgrounds, different experiences, different lines of work. I mean,
right.
There's so many factors at play, and that commitment and that support and that mentality of we're all, not to quote High School Musical, but we're all in this together of like, you know, I don't paint well, but I will pick up a paintbrush and paint because at the end of the day, this show needs to happen. And we get to kind of just discover those new skills. We get to champion each other, and we get to see how we all can fit into this process together.
Right.
So it's almost like a double-edged sword from that standpoint of like, you know, people like to do theater, they like to do what they like to do, but not, you know, sometimes people just don't, there's like that connection there of like realizing that you are part of a bigger thing beyond just what you're doing. And I think that's a really, really big thing to highlight, specifically with professionalism.
Yeah, I think that's a big aspect. I would say when it comes to professionalism, one of the biggest things that we try to champion is leading by example, and how it always comes from the top down.
Yes.
Like the standards you set for any production are coming from you. Like people are watching you to see if you meet them or don't meet them. And that's something we've always done well, I will say, is being in the trenches with our people when we need to be.
Yeah.
When we're unloading a U-Haul, you and I are always grabbing stuff off the truck and loading it. You know, and every time we unload or load, there's always a couple stragglers that don't move anything. And that, I think that's the most important thing is that leadership is showing, like, I'm not going to tell that person to go move necessarily, but I'm going to carry a bunch of heavy crap right past them, and eventually they'll get the hint that they should probably also be moving stuff, especially if their director is moving stuff. So,
could you imagine a world where, like, you know, it's tech week, or, you know, it's a performance, or it's load in or strike, and you or I, as director, just show up and we just sit in the booth. Okay, it's showtime. Let's run the show. And then we leave.
No, and you know why? We've experienced that world.
That's so true.
We were on the other side of that. And this is a very dramatic term for how it felt, but it was a form of abandonment. It was like saying, you know, my emotions are too high for you right now. You guys are on your own, and I'm just gonna go do my own thing. Like we've been through that, and
absolutely.
I think for us it could have gone either way. We could have become that, or we could have gone the opposite direction.
Exactly.
And I'm really glad we went the opposite direction.
For sure.
But it sucks when your director's like that. It sucks. It kills morale.
Exactly. Yeah, and so I had an interesting conversation. You and I are, specifically with Into the Woods, in a really unique position because we're directing family members.
Yep.
And this is not a new experience for you, but for me, it's been really eye-opening getting to work with my brother on Into the Woods. Him and I had a conversation recently about, you know, him watching you and I direct, and like we've you know, I've known my brother my entire life. You've known him for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Like hearing him express, like, and say, you know, it's almost like an outsider's perspective watching these rehearsals and seeing the rapport that we have.
Because
like,
he's seen the shows,
right?
But he's never seen the process.
He's never seen the process to get to the shows, and it was just really, not just heartwarming, but like really informative to hear from him of like, you know, watching myself and you direct, and having that those interactions with our cast members, and having those interactions with our technicians, and like knowing that there's like a delicate balance, and like we pride ourselves on having such like a a creative space with everybody, while also still making sure that we get the job done at the end of the day, which is a comment that you and I make to each other all the time, where like at the end of the day, a show still has to happen. But also realizing that people are choosing to be here. This was something that they wanted to do. This is a way that they're spending their free time, and like knowing that there is an opportunity to have a good time, and people should be having a good time, and knowing where that line is. And he was just expressing how impressed and, you know, nice it was to see that we had created that kind of dynamic with our casts, which is, like I said, very nice to hear, especially after all of these years of doing different shows.
Yeah, it's a very interesting balancing act.
Mm-hmm.
And especially being, you know, just directing something with someone else, like not assistant directing, but co-directing. It's like if two artists are trying to paint the same painting.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Sometimes there are disagreements on where you want a certain color, or where you want a certain item in the painting, or whatever. Because it is an interpretive and creative process. And I think that, I mean, that's something we navigate pretty well, I'd say, with every show we do together. But we have disagreements live. We have them live in front of the cast, and that's a really interesting challenge when that happens. And usually, what one of us ends up saying, like, you know, whomever disagrees, it's like, all right, let's give it a shot. Mm-hmm. And then
it's either that, or
there.
it's I always love when we have disagreements during rehearsal and everybody's looking at us to make a final decision, and the ultimate decision is, okay, everyone talk amongst yourselves for 3 minutes while you and I work through that process.
And sometimes that is the best answer, because sometimes it's, okay, we actually need like dedicated like 5 minutes to talk to each other, where we don't have 25 people staring at us.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable feeling when you're like, you're trying to make a decision. Mm-hmm. You're trying to understand the other person's perspective. Yeah. You're kind of doing it on a stage or a platform, basically, because you have an audience.
Exactly.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So trying to navigate that is really interesting. I think we've done a good job. But even just recently, I remember you were saying something, and I thought you were talking about a different character.
Oh, yes.
And I could not understand. Uh-huh. I was like, Joel's lost his mind. Like, you really wanted to do a particular blocking thing. I thought you were talking about a different character. And I was like, why? And then the strangest part is a cast member started backing you up in front of me. And I was like, whoa. We need to go have a sidebar. So we removed ourselves from the situation. All it took was about 30 seconds to realize, we were having two different conversations that entire time. Mm-hmm. But, again, when you're doing it under that level of pressure, a lot of miscommunication can happen. Yes. And it happens really fast, and you have to keep moving. We don't have the luxury of being able to have an actual fight in front of the cast. That's never going to happen.
Which we don't have fights away from the cast either. Fights don't happen.
No. We've had...
disagreements.
I was going to say professional disagreements, and I was like, am I changing into Joel? Am I morphing into him? Because that sounds like a diplomatic way of saying fight. But, no, we haven't had fights. We've definitely had conversations where, you know, there have been times where I was honest with you, and I said, you know, hey, the way you respond when you get frustrated is actually triggering for me. Is there something we can do where you can give me something so I don't think you're mad at me? And, you know, I really appreciate that we have that type of relationship, because we work together so often that we're able to be honest with each other, and I know the things that are going to trigger you, and you know the things that are going to trigger me, and we can kind of, like, balance each other. And, you know, sometimes this is such a weird example, but there was a moment in Matilda, and this wasn't even, like, a big, like, disagreement or controversy or something, but like one of the kids was doing something so hilarious, and I knew you could handle it professionally, and I literally had to step away because my body was exploding with laughter. Like I could not contain it, and I had to remove myself from the situation. But we've both done that to each other, where we're like, yeah, you're gonna handle this one, and I'm stepping away, or vice versa.
We had a situation happen. You had one that happened recently that I had to kind of step in and address. And it was someone had asked you a question that you had shared the answer to multiple times.
Oh!
Do you remember those?
Yes. It was during Pippin, right?
No, I actually...
The costume...
Oh, yes.
question.
So that was one. Yes, the costume
Okay.
one. You get a lot of questions when you're costuming about, where's my costume? Is this costume ready? X, Y, and Z. And I think that night it was just a lot of questions about, hey, where are the costumes? Where are the costumes? Where are the costumes? Every person.
Like... I was just talking to some of our friends last night about this. There are certain moments that we go through in community theater where I'm like, I'm being punked. Where is the camera? That was one of those moments. It was comical. So the Pippin cast, they all went into that back room.
Yeah.
Right? And we were out front. And someone came out and said, hey, Miranda, where's my costume? And I said, Jen's bringing them. Give us a couple minutes. She'll be here soon. And they went back.
Mm-hmm.
And then another person came out and asked the same exact question. I gave the same exact answer. They went back.
Mm-hmm.
Another person came out, asked a question. I think it was on the fourth person.
Mm-hmm.
You saw my face. And this person, innocent, they
Right.
did not know that
No.
3 people had come before them and asked
Exactly.
the same exact question.
Yep.
But I remember you stepped in and you said, hey, so-and-so, could you do us a favor and just tell everyone back there that their costumes are on the way
Mm-hmm.
and they will be here soon? And it was just one of those moments where I was like, this is it. This is a joke. Not that many people can have the same exact question and ask me in the same exact way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of those memories that I had, and then I think we'd had one recently, and I don't know, it had to have been for Into the Woods, but someone had asked a similar question that you had given a response to multiple times through multiple different channels, and they essentially walked in and asked you that question, and I was like, Miranda cannot handle that question again right now. I need to say something before.
Do you remember what question it was?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but...
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it happens all the time where we like you said, we understand where our limits are, and because we are communicating so frequently, we know, like, what to ask, when to step in, that type of thing. And that's, a good working balance.
Yeah.
It has been a good working balance.
Yeah, they also, the cast, this doesn't happen every time, but when we have nights off, they love to do this thing where they'll, like, one of them, without fail, will throw us, like, a big curveball via, like, Slack.
Yep.
And it's always when we have a night off. It's like, hey, I have to take a week off right before tech or something the night before. Or, like, hey, so-and-so has to drop a show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're always, like, big, huge things. And that's something that, I've been working on in professional capacity is, like, how do I not bring work home with me all the time?
Especially when so much of your work is at your home.
So much, yeah. So that's a whole nother, like, can of worms that we can talk about at some point. But basically where we construct our sets and where the props and costumes live is a detached garage right next to my house. Like, literally right next to it.
Yeah.
And there's no bathroom in there. So people have to go to the bathroom. Where do they go? In my house.
Mm-hmm.
So there aren't boundaries there yet. And we use Slack to communicate, which is great. But also, it's almost as quick as texting. So people can just, like, basically throw us text messages at all hours of the night. So it's on us to create those boundaries. And sometimes those boundaries are hard to create and enforce. Like, I remember yesterday when you were taking your day, at first I was getting messages in the morning, and then I stopped, but I was like, if I keep getting messages, I'm just going to tell people, like, hey, Joel's taking a self-care day. Can you please hold all questions until tomorrow? But,
yeah,
it's a lot of questions about everything.
There are a lot of questions out there for sure. I really wanted to kind of tie all this back to our professionalism conversation and the fact of we know we're not perfect. I'm never going to ever claim that I am, especially on this topic, because there's always new things going on. There's always new things to learn. So I'm just curious, and I'll share mine, but do you have any like moments where you feel like your level of professionalism maybe wasn't what it should have been, and kind of how you've grown from that?
Oh yeah, I mean there's probably a lot of examples. Let me think of one. Yeah, I can think of one. We were doing a play. I'm not going to name the play. We were doing a play, and someone else was directing it. Mm-hmm. And this person and myself, our personalities really just didn't jive most of the time, especially in leadership roles.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I'm joking on my
choked
coffee.
up about it.
I know. Hold on. Let me wet my whistle. I hate that saying. Anyway, I was doing a play, and the director wanted everyone in the cast to clap for each other during bows, like during the actual performances. For those of you that know me and Joel, you know, we do not like that. We don't allow that.
We've made a standard. We set a standard of you earn your applause. Mm-hmm. Basically, let the audience clap for you. Mm-hmm. You don't need to start, because here's the thing that happens with applause. When one person starts clapping, everybody starts clapping. Mm-hmm. I would think, as a performer, you would want that to start from the audience and not from Susie Joe, who played Tree number 4.
Yeah. Who's standing right next to you on stage.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a pet peeve of ours.
Mm-hmm.
We set that rule.
Yeah.
STS doesn't do that.
Long established rule at this point.
Yeah. It's and by the way, people have plenty of opportunities to clap for each other during rehearsals.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. They can, sing people's praises, whatever. But once we get into tech, it's game time.
Yeah.
And we're taking it seriously. So this director wanted people to be able to clap for each other.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be a simple conversation in front of the cast, and I said, no, we don't do that. It's not professional, and we're not doing that. And they just started, really arguing with me in front of the cast. And something in the way that they were arguing with me or their tone of voice triggered me, and I started, fighting back and engaging in it. And after the fact, I definitely had this moment of, I should not have done that in front of the cast. That, I was not in control of my emotions in that moment in the way that I usually am.
Sure.
And where I'm usually regulated, I was not regulated, and I was just pissed. Yeah. And we had a conversation later. Basically, I don't know why they had interpreted that, my comment as the high school productions they help with aren't professional because they clap for each other in high school. And I was like, well, but that's high school. I was like, do whatever the hell you want. That's high school. That's your program. This is my program. And this is what I want. And then they started showing me videos of Newsies on Broadway and how the Newsies clapped for each other on Broadway. And if they can do it on Broadway, then we can do it here. And I was like, at the end of the day, it's a simple rule that we set for STS.
Right.
Just follow it. It's it doesn't have to be a big blown up thing. It's just it's I'm the producer. I don't like it. Just don't do it. And I'm not talking about your creative vision.
I want to make that very clear that you don't exercise your power as producer very often.
No, I use it very sparingly.
Yeah, I mean, you really don't. As someone who has directed multiple shows for this company, you don't jump in unless there's something very, very wrong.
Yeah, there are select times I'll do it. If it's a overall company look thing, like clapping during bows, I step in. If there's something in a production that I see that doesn't look like it's ready to go on stage when it should be, I step in.
Yeah.
But it's very rare. I don't, if you're directing a show, I don't tell you how to direct.
Right.
And that goes with almost everyone. unless they are really struggling, in which case I'll step in and be like, hey, here's how I think I would handle this situation. Because it is a lot, directing is a lot of managing people. And not everyone is prepared for that part. They're prepared for the creative part, but they're not prepared for their best friend getting upset because they didn't get the role they wanted. You know, there's a bunch of other issues that come up. But that's a prime example, and there's been so many other ones. But that was definitely one where I was like, yeah, I should handle myself better there. And I missed the mark in terms of professionalism, and the cast should never see the producer and director fighting in front of them in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's a time and an opportunity for that. And like you said, it doesn't happen all the time. So like being in that moment, that time, it's like, okay, great, this is an uncharted territory, essentially.
And I don't think any of those people had seen me lose my cool before. And I think that was very, like, jarring of, like, oh, my God, you know, what is going on with Miranda? And like I said, it's just our personalities, like, something about it set me off in a way that I don't normally get set off. And, I mean, now I've had 2 additional years of therapy since then. I'm better at being able to regulate myself.
You're prepped and ready to go at this point.
I just walk away from those situations. I'm like, I'm not engaging in this right now. Because I don't have anything nice to offer at this moment. What about you?
So I was thinking about this. And for me, one of the things that I just struggle with in life sometimes is I want to be everywhere for everybody at all times.
Yeah.
And because I do that, I have this habit of like spreading myself super thin, trying to be everywhere for everybody at all times. Where that becomes a problem and how that impacts my professionalism is that there are times where, you know, I end up running late, or like my time management, because I'm focusing on 64 different things, certain things fall through the cracks, and my ability to be in multiple places at one time, you know, is not always feasible. And I think that's one of those things that I really, really struggle with. I've definitely gotten better with it. I think I've also gotten better with realizing what my strengths are. And, you know, we've talked about this before, specifically with like certain things that are part of the show process. Like I want to be able as a director to give an answer to every single question and dedicate all of my time to every single aspect of a show. And physically with some of these shows, that's impossible. Right. So I've kind of gotten to the point now where it's not only the time management piece of it, but it's also the delegating of like realizing that I'm going to be a much more effective leader if I realize what my strengths are, and I'm able to focus on those things and also realize that there are certain things that I'm not the best at. Yeah. And working with the greater team to delegate those tasks to the appropriate people who can help not only create my vision or what, you know, the perspective is of the director, but can also provide those resources in an understanding and like clearly stated way to the person who may be asking a question or who may need things. So kind of like a double-edged sword there. One of the things that I think about frequently, and this lines up with this, and it's a conversation you and I have had over probably the last year and a half mostly, but one thing we always get questions on, and it's right around this time. It actually just happened with Into the Woods the other day.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
What do we do about hair and makeup? Do you have any preferences? Now, I would like to be the first one to say, I am the absolute worst person to answer that question. I wear a hat 90% of the time, so people can't see my hair.
I'm about a half step better than you at answering that question, but that's not saying a lot. Yeah. We're both bottom of the barrel there.
Yeah, and I think my favorite thing is just like, I can tell you if it looks and it fits with the show, but I can't tell you how to get from point A of just being your natural self to being what you need to be on stage. That's just not my skill set. So you've done this really great thing over the last couple of shows where you've said, this is not our strong suit. And I know there are people in the cast that are really passionate, and there are people working on these shows that are very passionate about hair and makeup. We're going to start a Slack channel, and if that's something you're interested in and you want to help kind of spearhead that conversation, please let us know and we'll get that conversation started.
The worst part about that, and I think the thing that's probably frustrating to our casts, is we do have opinions on it.
Mm-hmm.
We know when we don't like it.
Yeah.
We know when we like it.
Exactly.
We can't give you much more than that. And I think that's the hard thing, is they're looking for a lot of direction. But yeah, luckily there is always someone in the cast that has a passion for it, that is willing to spearhead that conversation. But
yeah,
every time I get that question, I'm just like, I don't know how to answer this. Every single time.
Yeah.
It's just not our strong suit.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the big things that I really believe, just from a professional standpoint, I've struggled with over the years. And that also trickles out into other things too. And like, because I've had, those concerns with delegating in the past, my ability to communicate those concerns to other people and like state, hey, I like what you're doing, or I don't like what you're doing, or can we do something different, or what's the status on that, like some of that dialogue also doesn't get out the way that it should. And I think that's, I can understand from my perspective, it's frustrating because I'm not getting the information that I need, but I can also understand from the person who might be supporting me with that. It's frustrating. So it's,
right. I've seen you get in binds
before. Right.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes having those tough conversations and, those tough, poignant discussions can be challenging. And I think that's something that I've been working on and ultimately affects our professionalism and impacts us as leaders of this organization and supporting these shows and supporting these productions. And
a lot of directing, especially at the community theater level, is managing a lot of different teams. And unfortunately, a lot of times the way it works is any tasks that slip through the cracks end up on your plate, basically.
Yes.
So any props, any costumes, any set things that don't get done, then fall to you. So delegation and time management are like two of the most important things when you're directing, because otherwise you will run yourself ragged and have to drive a U-Haul to Myersville and back.
Yes. Yeah, I think that would be my biggest thing. And then that, like, having those conversations and being upfront about what you need. Like I said, it creates a better and more professional atmosphere. We always like to use the expression "fake it till you make it." Like, if something like that comes up, finding a way to move forward with it in the moment and then strategizing from there. Yeah. Just always the way to go. So that's just something that I continue to work on. And the time management plays a role in there too, because, if you're not providing something on time for people, or, you're missing a deadline for something on a show, that's a big factor too.
Well, here's the funny thing with that too.
Yeah.
Is this can be tough. It really, you need a specific type of personality to kind of do the tasks that we do, I would say, because just an example of this, running myself ragged a little bit trying to get the rest of the props we need. Okay. The actors, this is not their fault. This is just human nature. All they focus on is what they don't have.
Correct.
So if you bring in 20 new things, but they're still missing one thing, they're not going to ask you about the 20 things you brought in. They're going to ask you about the one thing they're missing. So you just need a certain type of personality to realize, like, that's not a reflection on you.
No.
It's just they're focused on what they need, and the expectation is just they're just going to have it. They don't really care how it gets there.
Right.
They just want to show up and have it there.
We like to refer to that as a luxury. You don't have that expectation of, like, you don't have to have the focus in mind of, hey, we need 40 props. You only have the luxury of worrying about the one prop and making sure that you have it.
And you know what? I get it. Like, it sucks when, 95% of the props are there, but the one prop you need for your song isn't there yet.
Yes.
So I do understand from that perspective, but it's just, it is tough when you go in for a run through and you bring all these new things and you're like, we're so close to having everything, and then you have two people go up to you and you're like, hey, Miranda, did you bring
X, Y,
such and such?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, nope, that's one of the 3 things I don't have today. Thank you so much for reminding me. I do have one thing in terms of professionalism that I think we both struggle with that I think we should talk about
Okay,
in this
sure.
conversation.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, and then I have a fun final question for us.
Oh,
so go
okay,
for it.
I love it.
What's our growth opportunity?
People pleasing.
Oh yes.
We
yeah.
both are people pleasers.
Yes. To a fault sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, we were just having a conversation about someone who has technically breached their contract a couple times now, and we're still struggling to remove them from a show. Because we're people pleasers, right? I mean, what other reason is there? I think it's because we don't want them to be upset. We don't want to have the difficult conversation. It's one of we've gotten so much better at it, I will say, and I give us credit for that. You definitely used to be a very conflict averse person, me as well, and this, I don't want to speak for you, but I think this environment has kind of forced at least myself to tackle conflicts more head on because you don't really have a choice. But there are a lot of times where we find ourselves in situations where we have to have pretty tough conversations with people, or we have to enforce boundaries that we've set to make sure that the shows happen. And it is never easy, no matter how many times we do it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors at play there, and to say that I'm conflict averse is like the understatement of the century. Like, I very much so, you don't want people to be upset or whatnot, but at the end of the day, you have to have those serious conversations because it's impacting the integrity of what we're doing here at the end of the day. And on top of that, you also have to weigh a lot of the other factors, how the situation is being perceived by other people, how it's impacting others, what are the long-term ramifications. Like, there's a lot of things to factor into that conversation. So I agree with you 100%. And my favorite thing is, I mean, over the years, not only am I conflict averse, but I talk a very big game. And then the execution doesn't always play out the way that I would like to.
Or you have a lot of feelings about how I should handle something.
I do because, well, and that is a compliment that I give to you, in that you've been in a position and, a lot of things do fall to you. And I've been more vocal about how they shouldn't have to fall to you all the time. And I also think there's a conversation there about, like, the growth of understanding how to have those conversations is not something that comes natural to anybody for the most part. So it's a learning process. I know we both have been working on it, and we both have been trying to figure out, how best to handle some of these more tense, I don't want to say tense, but, some of these difficult conversations and problems, and making sure that everybody gets the same opportunity across the board.
Yeah, there are times where we're kind of like co-parents, actually.
Yes.
Like, talking about, okay, well, this person did this. How do we respond? What does it look like to the cast? Like, does it look like we didn't do anything? Like, does it look like they got away with it if we respond a certain way?
Sure.
And I think, too, especially when it's like a public conflict, like, people, like, the example of not showing up to rehearsals, people know when someone's not showing up to rehearsals. The cast knows. Everyone has opinions about what should or shouldn't be done.
Correct.
And how you should or shouldn't handle it. And having to kind of drown out the noise. And that's why, we're such a good sounding board for each other, and also looping in people like Savannah. But having these conversations of, all right, here's what happened. And we've even said to each other, I don't want to do it, but I'll do it, because it's the right thing. Right? I don't want to have the conversation, but I'm going to have it.
Sure.
There have been times where, like, my stomach felt, like, actually upset before I've had to have conversations. We have a great conversation coming up for Bright Star that we'll get to that has everything to do with conflict.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect example. But, no, I mean, and to your point, I definitely don't feel like I'm on an island anymore with conflict. I think...
It's good to hear.
I've seen you push yourself in the conflict department and handle a lot more conflicts, and I know it's hard for you, and I'm proud of you for doing that.
Thank you. And same to you. It's been I think it's like a learning process for all of us. But I did want to ask real quick.
Yeah.
We only have like a moment left.
Yeah.
Something fun. What is your professionalism, like biggest pet peeve with professionalism.
Biggest pet peeve.
Yes.
Oh, there's a hair in my mouth. It's going to drive me crazy.
Is that the pet peeve? Oh, no.
No,
Okay.
that's not my pet peeve.
Mm-hmm.
I think right now, and I might change my answer a week from now. Right now, it is when people send me a message that they're going to be late to rehearsal because they either had to get gas or food.
Mm-hmm.
That is my pet peeve right now because it happens more often than you would think.
Mm-hmm.
And they are two things that are predictable.
Mm-hmm.
When are you going to need to eat? And
Yes.
if your car needs to be filled with gas.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like those excuses. So if you're listening, come up with some better ones.
Okay. Yeah. I think my personal one is people who are not prepared.
Yep. That's a good one.
And I think we are we both have been performers. You know, I sometimes it's been a really long time since I performed, but like, you've done shows more recently in the acting role, but we understand the work that needs to go into these productions, especially if you have a really large role and, you know, you have a lot of lines to learn. And like, not only are we understanding of that, but we are very flexible when it comes to meeting deadlines, and like, we give enough notice for off book, and
Yep.
you know, even after off book, we still have a cushion in there of like calling lines.
Yep.
And like, my general statement of like, hey, you know, I don't like to expect from actors that they need to have everything memorized before they've learned all their blocking. That generally is my go-to kind of conversation with that. So like,
Some
when
people need the blocking to learn.
Exactly,
the lines.
exactly. Everyone does things differently. So I would say that's my biggest professionalism pet peeve is when people aren't prepared. There's a lot of opportunities there, and I almost would rather people have a conversation when something like that is going wrong.
I need support. I'm not getting there.
Because we get it. We really, really do get it, but it's challenging sometimes.
It's like when you're working your 9 to 5, like you can't go to your boss on the day of the deadline and just be like, yeah, it's not even close to finished because I was struggling the whole time. They're going to say, well, why didn't you say anything?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's that same idea. And going back to what we said earlier with our other experiences, we've both experienced working opposite someone who did not have their lines memorized, even on the performance day.
Mm-hmm.
We've both experienced that. It sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that to your castmates. It's horrible.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure.
Well, I'm sure we'll have more professionalism conversations because I know it's something we're passionate about. But
I've loved this conversation.
this
really
was good.
enlightening. So, yeah.
Earn your applause, people.
Exactly.
Because you can. And you will.
I think
every
we got
time.
a great episode title right there.
Earn your applause.
Mm-hmm.
And earn some dough.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, that's it for this week. And we'll be back with more exciting tales on our next episode.
We sure will. Stay snarky, peeps.
Yes. Bye.
Bye. And that's a wrap. Thanks for getting snarky with us. We'll see you later.
See you next time.